president makes decisions. He's the decider. The press secretary announces those decisions, and you people of the press type those decisions down. Make, announce, type. Just put them through a spell check and go home. Get to know your family again. Make love to your wife. Write that novel you got kicking around in your head. You know, the one about the intrepid Washington reporter with the courage to stand up to the administration? You know, fiction.
Stephen Colbert speaking at the White House Correspondents Association dinner, May 2006. His performance was one of the most talked about topics on the internet the next day. But the corporate media ignored him. According to the media watch group Media Matters, subsequent press coverage focused only on President Bush's short speech while omitting mention of Stephen Colbert. All three major TV networks played clips of Bush's routine on their morning shows, but ignored Colbert entirely. CNN's American Morning did the same. New York Times' initial coverage of the night omitted any reference to Colbert.
Well, I'm proud to say that editor and publisher was the first to cover it widely, and it was our internet report that was picked up by most of the internet to get the ball rolling.
And we broadcast the whole thing.
Right.
But it was shocking.
Well, I mean, it was obvious that the media, if he had just poked fun at the president, he might have gotten away with it. But the fact that he was just as critical of the media, as the clip you just showed, is actually included in my book. They kind of kick back. I remember Dana Milbank and other people appearing on TV and saying, "Oh, wasn't that funny?" or and so forth. But really, they were kind of reeling. They're not used to getting that kind of mockery, to their faces.
And what about right through to this day? I mean, the 5th anniversary did get coverage on all the major networks.
Right. Well, the problem was asking viewers and listeners to just think. Did you see any media self-assessment in all the finger-pointing that went on and all the analysis, in all the review of the war and what went right and what went wrong and who did a good job and who didn't? Did you see much or any of the media reviewing its own performance? I thought it was shocking. I saw hardly anything in any of the newspapers or in the mainstream looking at their own performance. And obviously, from the fact I've written this book, I think there's much reason for criticism. And the fact there was, again, no self-assessment is revealing the fact that maybe it's guilt or it's shame or whatever it is, but certainly badly needed.
And, of course, it's not just about history. It's about the future. It's, for example, about bombing Iran. Well,
and, again, I hope the book lays out lessons to report. I think in general, to speak broadly, I think there has been in the past few years, more mainstream reporters who are a little quicker to be suspicious of the administration line. And, I hope that continues. But, there was a story in the New York Times today about where is the media in the war? Where did everybody go? Why are there so few reporters left in Iraq? So that's another important factor.
I wanted to go back in time to this excerpt of the documentary War Made Easy that features the media critic Norman Solomon. It relates to the media's response to former Secretary of State Colin Powell's speech at the United Nations making the case for weapons of mass destruction in Iraq.
Saddam Hussein's intentions have never changed. He is not developing the missiles for self-defense. These are missiles that Iraq wants in order to project power, to threaten, and to deliver chemical, biological, and, if we let him, nuclear warheads.
Today, Secretary of State Powell brought the United Nations Security Council the administration's best evidence so far.
After Colin Powell's speech to the UN, immediately the U.S. press applauded with great enthusiasm.
Did Colin Powell close the deal today in your mind for anyone who has yet objectively to make up their mind?
I think for anybody who analyzes the situation, he has closed the deal.
There's irrefutable, undeniable, incontrovertible evidence today. Colin Powell brilliantly delivered that smoking gun today. Colin Powell's outstanding today. I mean, it was lockstep. It was so compelling. I don't see how anybody at this point cannot support this effort.
He made a wonderful presentation. I thought he made a great case for the purpose of disarmament was devastating. I mean, and overwhelming abundance of the evidence. Point after point after point. He just flooded the terrain with data.
It's the end of the argument phase. America has made its case.
The Powell speech has moved the ball.
I think case is closed.
Yes, an excerpt of War Made Easy, produced by the Media Education Foundation. Greg Mitchell, the significance of that moment, February 5th, 2003, is what, just over a month before the invasion. Right.
Well, actually, that clip is a little misleading in that all the people in it, you had Henry Kissinger speaking and you had Fox News people. That wasn't really the problem. The problem was that the Washington Post and the New York Times and all the other real moderate, or some say liberal publications all bought into it. So, I mean, Fox News wouldn't particularly bother me.
And you had Aaron Brown there, it's from CNN. Yeah,
but he was interviewing Kissinger. So, I mean, the real problem was the real influence of people in the middle, the Washington Post, the New York Times, and those people just bought into it just as much as you saw on Fox News.
And the people who aren't interviewed, I mean, you begin your book, one of the people you start with is Daniel Ellsberg.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But there were so many. This wasn't just a tiny, quiet minority. I mean, if you think of February 15th, the massive protests in the streets, right. Millions rock the world in protest. Where were those people in these corporate network studios?
Again, it's incredible. You look at the numbers; they just weren't there. You know, I mean, we interviewed Daniel Ellsberg, we interviewed Norman Solomon, and we interviewed Arianna Huffington and people like that. They were certainly available, and it really is shocking if you look back. I mean, you know, Wesley Clark was sort of the, I don't know what he was seen as the person who gave more of a balanced talk, but that was about it.
Moving forward, you say when Valerie Plame finally testified before Congress in March 2007, much of the media coverage focused on her appearance. Marianne Akers wrote a piece for the Washington Post titled "Hearing Room Chic," right. Noting Plame wore a fetching jacket and pants and should be played by Katie Holmes in the movie version of her story because they both favor Armani.
Right. Well, that was, again, typical of the when Valerie Plame finally testified and the CIA completely vouched for her as a covert agent. All this evidence came out, and the media still downplayed it. It was almost as if it wasn't even happening.
Let's go right through now. I mean, 2007, 2008, you have David Brooks on Meet the Press declaring 10,000 Iraqis a month would perish if the U.S. pulls out. Bob Woodward, also on the show, challenged him, asking for a source. Brooks admitted, I just picked that 10,000 out of the air.
Well, that's David Brooks, I guess. I mean, we've seen that continually, the warnings about what would happen if we leave. And again, looking at the whole 5-year period, what is tremendously depressing is that a lot of these things have been said throughout this whole period. And you go back and the warnings about what would happen if we leave. Meanwhile, we've stayed, and we have thousands dying every month, and a tremendous effect on our own, you know, even on the United States economy. And this has gone on year after year now.
The media coverage, Greg Mitchell, of the campaigns. You've been covering the presidential campaign.
Well, I mean, we've so often seen the media declare that the war has receded as an issue, that the public does not care that much about it anymore. And of course, this is deceptive because you have Democrats in their debates pretty much agreeing, and the Republicans in their debates pretty much agreeing. Now, you can imagine if there was a debate next week between one of the two Democrats and John McCain, what a hot topic the war would be. Even if you don't necessarily completely agree with the Democrats' position, it would be a very extremely hot topic. And I don't think the war has receded at all when when a choice is brought up.
You most recently wrote about the mother of a U.S. soldier killed in Iraq filing a lawsuit in Pennsylvania court.
Right. Well, one of the continuing themes in my book is the effect on the soldiers, going back to years ago, and the fact that it took a long time for the media to begin to pay attention to the ill treatment of the soldiers, and also the surprising number of suicides. I've written continually about the suicides for soldiers both in Iraq and here at home. And, you know, just now we're starting to get families who are questioning the investigations by the military, by the way these things have been handled, launching lawsuits. So I think we're going to see a lot more of that in the future as the protest grows.
And most recently, last weekend, Winter Soldier, this gathering of hundreds of active duty and Iraq and Afghanistan war vets in Silver Spring, Maryland, talking about their own experiences in war. corporate media
Very little
did not
mainstream
show
coverage,
up.
right, yeah.
The networks did not show up to
Right,
cover these hearings.
right.
Washington Post had a piece in the Metro section. New York
Right.
Times, nothing. Los Angeles Times, nothing.
Well, again, I think there's a sense, a false sense among the mainstream that this issue is fading, that people are waiting for the election to be over and having a new president. And I think it's completely false. I mean, again, what I show in the book is that public opinion polls going back now 4 years have shown that most people in the country feel that the war, A, was a mistake, B, is not worth fighting, and C, we should start withdrawing. And this has gone on for 3 or 4 years now. So it's not like the public opinion is in doubt. So I think to sort of say, let's not cover this kind of stuff because we really don't know if people care about it is completely false.
Greg Mitchell, I want to thank you for being with us, editor of Editor and Publisher. His new book is So Wrong for So Long, How the Press, the Pundits, and the President Failed on Iraq. And that does it for our broadcast democracy now, produced by Angelique Comet, Mike Burke, Shruf Dokaду Saramate, Jeffrey Hagerman, Steve Martinez. I'm Amy Goodman. Thanks so much for joining us. Our website is democracynow.org.